A few years ago, my phone rang. As I looked to see who it was, I recognized the name. The first words I heard was, "Do you have time to talk?" I had no idea that that phone call would become one of the greatest validation of my leadership career. Hey, this is Steve with Mentoring Moments. Um Mentoring Moments is something that I do on a weekly basis and talk a little story about what I've learned in my career that helped me be a better leader. This story is a personal story. Um, I'll kind of set the stage a little bit of the overall story. So uh, I was a new kind of area manager. I moved into the area. I was getting to know people, working with different locations, and one individual that I ran across was really having some struggles. Um, there were a lot of personal things going on, and things that were affecting their work balance. And through this, there was a lot of one-on-ones that happened, um, and a lot of times this is one of those things that as we work in a corporate world, we would have HR people say that you don't want to get involved with personal issues. We need to keep personal lives and work life separated. Got to be careful as a manager being involved in those. But for me, I chose to listen. I looked at this as an opportunity to uh, help somebody move in the right direction. And I think that having a right structure, and that structure was solid one-on-ones. We had a set time every week. We had it in my office. My office had plenty of windows to know when anybody was in my office. It was a scenario that was very work related, but on a personal level. And you know, you look at those kind of things, and again, like I said, some people would want to shy away from that. And I don't want to get into a personal life. I don't want to deal with something on a personal level. Well, sorry folks, but leadership is personal. When we deal with people, I don't care how we look at it. If we're dealing with people, it is personal. Uh, and if we care about people, then we're going to deal with personal issues. Um, I tend to be that person that some might call me a people pleaser a little bit. I enjoy working with people. I enjoy being help. I enjoy mentoring, growing, and that's exactly why I'm doing these videos today. Is that's part of who I am. I also have learned in my career that uh, there are personal issues that you can deal with, but you have to have solid boundaries of how those things work. And um, if you have the right structure and do this, then I think you're okay. Um, this situation was unique because it did tend to have a lot of personal issues with it, but it but again it came back to the work, and if we could resolve some of the personal issues, I know it would make the work life much better. So, um, you know, again, following through with this, really getting involved and trying to help somebody grow was what I was looking at. And so, kind of the structure that I had is we had regular scheduled meetings. These were very intentional of what we were trying to talk about, what we were working on. I was not there to solve problems. I was there to listen. I was there to maybe give some validation to the thoughts that they may be having. I wasn't there to give them the exact prescription of what they needed to do with their life. That is not my role, and it should not be any leadership's role, but it's a leadership role can play into helping that individual find what they're looking for and help them move in the right direction. Obviously, one of the things that I do in my one-on-ones in these situations is if I had personal experiences that went along the way, I shared my personal experiences. Doesn't mean that that person has to listen or follow or do anything. It's just giving them a validation that they're not the only ones dealing with a particular problem. And in this situation, I had dealt with the same issue, and it was something that was part of my life. And so people rarely open up because we have the right answers. They open up because they believe we are finally in a place, finally in a place where they're not being judged. That is pretty critical when somebody wants to find some resolution or some help with a personal issue. There has to be trust, and that trust has to be unjudged. They can't go sit in a room and be open and vulnerable and be able to talk about things if they don't feel trust. Um, and these conversations like this build a tremendous trust. These are not built overnight. They are things that conversation after conversation, that trust builds. It builds week after week, conversation after conversation. It's just one of those things that keeps growing. So trust isn't claimed. It's earned through consistency and authenticity. And so if you look at that, if we're being our true selves, we're being vulnerable, we're sharing maybe something that's happened in our lives, we're being part of the solution of allowing them to talk and just listen, that trust grows. And so something I've mentioned in some of my other videos is the impact that watching somebody evolve, change, grow, develop into whether it's a leader or just developing into a role that they're trying to develop into, you know, those are things that excite me. And in this story, that's exactly what happened. As we worked through some of the personal issues, then I could see that the confidence changed and there was much more confidence and things started to look different. Uh, with that confidence, then new opportunities came and new positions came up with this person. Uh, Promotions came and over time kept adding and adding to this person's resume. Um, but eventually, that person accepted a position way out of where I was at. Some would say that they may have surpassed my job, but this was down a whole different alley. But someone you mentor surpasses you or moves on, that's where you go, you know, hey, I've done my job well. I helped that person get where they needed to go. So years go on, life moves on. We hadn't talked, you know, the occasional message on Facebook, hey, how are things? You know, little things like that happened. But not a lot of interaction for well over 2 years. Then one day this phone call comes in, and that comment or that question of are you available to talk? Well, that was pretty interesting to me of having somebody that had moved on, had new bosses, had new career, was doing something, and they had reached a point um, where they felt like they needed some coaching again, some mentoring, and that validated that what I did in that person's life made a difference. And to me, that's where, you know, helping people and being a true leader really comes in. And I felt like this was a great validation that here's an example of where I have become a true leader, to have somebody reach out and talk. And so we put together a few weeks of just some coaching over the phone, and it was very interesting to kind of see where this went. It didn't take long because the trust had already been built, but it didn't take long to kind of find the root of the problem. And this problem happened to be, you know, something where somebody was dealing with a little imposter syndrome, where um, they didn't feel confident in the role they were in. They were struggling because they had reached a point in their career where uh, oftentimes people reach where they don't have a lot of people above them anymore. They are the ones making the decisions, and they are the ones making direction for the team. They're a lot of weight gets on your shoulders when you're in something like that. And this was one of those examples of that person felt a little bit over their head. But you know, if you study about imposter syndrome, it's hey, I'm not good enough to fill this role. But just having those conversations, you could see the confidence change again. Some validations that hey, I think you're making the right decisions. You know, they needed somebody to just lean on. You know, and when we talk about that, oftentimes leadership can be lonely because you're at the top, and and it's all up to you. There isn't somebody to go bounce things off of very often. If you're at the top level, you're expected to be able to handle those things. Um, you know, but I didn't give answers. I listened. You know, I asked questions. Um, I allowed them to be heard, and that's really all that I did in this part. And it changed things. Some confidence came back. Some things changed. Kind of life moved on, and you know, things still working in that same area. But uh, leadership doesn't become personal because we make it personal. Leadership is personal because of people are personal, and and that's a huge statement that we need to look at. We Leadership is dealing with people. People is always going to be personal. So we have to assume that. We can't always just say, you know, I only deal with business. You know, we'll always struggle being a leader in that scenario. In that, I have some of my videos are about managing versus leading. If you're not willing to step into leading and stepping into dealing with people, then you're a manager. You're not a leader. Um, but as we talk about the personal side of this, people don't leave their fears at the door when they come to work. They don't leave their dreams at the door when they come to work. They don't leave their struggles at the door when they come to work. Leadership is about people, and those things that are happening in their personal life are happening. We can't change that, and sometimes it affects their uh, position at work, and we sometimes need to step in. Um, but you know, we need to kind of look through um, what things kind of affect people, you know, and how these happen. But you know, this phone call didn't validate my position. It validated my choice to care. It validated me stepping in and being a leader. And so, you know, I think that's a great point here of knowing that sometimes you question your involvement, and knowing that hey, what I did was good. and I feel that. So looking back, I don't remember every sales number I hit in any project. I don't remember, every person that was hired and every person that I worked with. I don't remember all the metrics that we worked through in a company. I can go back and find files and look at spreadsheets and dig all that stuff up. But things that are remembered are the conversations, the breakthrough events, the people that trusted you, the people that allowed you to walk alongside them and help them in their lives. Those are the true moments that measure our careers as leaders. So, really think about that of when, and I bring this up a lot. I'm at that age where I'm in the process of stepping away from my professional work career. And in that, it's like, well, what am I leaving behind? And the more and more I think about it, it's not that, hey, over here on the wall, I've got some plaques and different things, that mention, hey, sales numbers or, lean processes that we achieved certain things, or, you know, your working capital, got improved by X amount. All of these things that happen in a business, you know, those are just all things that happen and you don't really think about them. But the people, I think about the people that influenced my life. I think about the people that I worked with, that I led, also influenced my life, and hopefully the people that I was able to influence their lives. So uh, next time you're around someone and you see them struggling, don't ask yourself whether it's part of your job description or not. Ask yourself whether one conversation could change the direction of their life. Think about that, because sometimes that's all it is just saying, hey, I notice you, I hear you, I want to listen. Uh, and that final step is, will you step in? I think that's a huge part of leadership, is thinking about the people. I mean, there are books out there, servant leadership, great example of how we should be as leaders. Lots of articles written about that, but really what it comes down to is, do you care about people? If you care about people, then step up and make that work. So again, this is a great conversation, and great being on here with you today with Genuine Mentors Mentoring Moments. Uh, if you like what you hear, subscribe here on YouTube. Look me up, thegenuinementor.com online, and you'll find training things there. I have some digital stuff, and I have a lot of written articles too. So I thank you for listening, and hope you have a great day.